I want you to get together.
Shehan. I want to take this time to just say thank you to all of the people that are joining the Christian Underground. It's a very slow and steady pace, but for this host who is a one-man band doing all this by himself on no budget and everything, I really do appreciate you guys coming in and taking the time to listen. This is definitely a labor of love. I really enjoy coming on here and introducing this information not only to those people in podcast land, but also to Christians who maybe aren't aware of the unseen realm that they live in on a daily basis. So if you like what you're hearing and you're new to the podcast, please be sure to subscribe. Those of you who are continuing, make sure you like this. It helps with the algorithm, push it out there. And then also, guys, again, make sure you're commenting on the post. I want to know what you're thinking. If you've got any questions, these are wonderful opportunities for you to ask. And if we ever get Paul back on here, then we will be able to ask those the next time he comes back on. So without further ado, I want to say again, thank you. And let's get this party started. All right. Well, we've got Paul Stobbs all the way from wonderful land of England, or the UK, as we want to say that. How are you doing today, Paul?
I'm doing well, thanks for having me. I've got to say, that was a pretty funky opening tune you've got going on there.
Well, believe it or not, there's even an image of a palace guard and on one of the Buckingham Palace guards on one of the images.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant.
We are just so thankful to have you on. This is definitely a topic that caught some eyes when I posted the advertisement on Instagram and all the different social medias. But I want to take a little bit of a break before we get into that. I know we've just started, and we do something here on the Christian Underground podcast where I call it the Q4s. It's 4 questions that we ask every person that comes on, and you're going to be no different.
Okay, yeah, sure, yeah.
All right. So, and trust me, it's coming from out middle of nowhere, but you'll just roll in with the punches, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
The first question we have is, what is your favorite genre of film?
Oh, you know, that has changed throughout my years. I suppose growing up, for some reason, I did have a strange morbid fascination with like horror. The deep psychological horror stuff, not the gory stuff. I'm not really bothered about shock horror. I was more looking for the weird, trippy things. But I don't know. I had a long stint of really loving World War II and war related films for some reason as well. Saving Private Ryan was up there as a really long time favorite. I have no idea why. But as I got older, to be honest, I kind of fizzled out away from film. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah.
Mm.
I don't really have time now, especially now I have a
Okay.
kid as well. I don't really know. But anything nowadays, it's just whatever kills an hour or two if I've got the time. But I rarely have the time to watch TV. I really do.
Yeah, yeah. Trust me, I understand. When you have kids, also your film becomes whatever they're interested in. So
I suppose right now
it's very
then,
rare that.
yeah, right now then, I guess the film I've watched the most is the Paw Patrol movie, um, part part one. He also really likes Doggone Trouble on Netflix. And he also really loves Alvin and the Chipmunks, the live action version, which I have seen about 500 times as well this past Christmas. So yeah, there you go. I guess they're my favorite films now.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, then let's. That moves us into the next question. What is your favorite genre of music?
Um, Acid jazz, I suppose, is a good way to sum it up. anything with a long, repetitive, droned out beat that I can lose myself into for an hour or two while I focus on doing something creative.
Yeah, yeah. I find when I'm writing, I like to listen to cyberpunk. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I'm not much
so,
of a fan
so
of
I'm with you.
music with words necessarily.
Mm,
Um,
mhm.
I don't know. I have an eclectic music taste. If you looked at my Spotify playlist, you just wouldn't have a clue what was going on, and even I don't really have a clue what's going on. If it has a funky jam to it, I'm gonna like it. But I play like five instruments myself, so I guess that's probably why I'm a bit all over the place. It's whatever's got talent behind it. I
Yeah.
appreciate, you know.
No, I hear you. Uh, Yeah, yeah, for sure. When I was in college, I took a history of jazz class, and the professor was a professional jazz musician, and it was amazing because we basically bought the Smithsonian's History of Jazz CD collection. And then again, I'm dating myself there. We were listening to CDs, um, but and we listened through the whole thing and just discussed it with Maestro. It was amazing. It was actually incredible. So I get it. I totally get it. When I'm working, I don't like to have lyrics either. I just like to have something that moves the soul, for sure.
Exactly.
Um, Yo, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, to be honest, jazz itself is really pretentious and all over the place and annoying. Acid jazz is a little bit more funky and up there, you know, with a bit more coherency. So I think I prefer that a little bit more than just straight up jazz, don't get me wrong. But I also love a good a bit of blues, you know, a bit of I used to be in a, what would we call ourselves? We called ourselves an acid jazz electro reggae funk band, rock band. I think that's what we were. So with a bit of ska thrown in there
Ooh,
for good measure as well. So I don't know. I'm
you're gonna
all
have to send me some MP3s.
I legitimately could. I could literally just tell you now to go to SoundCloud and just type in Paul Stobbs, and you'll find some really old gems on there from things we used to do. Um, that's all I'll say.
Oh, you know I'm gonna do that. You know I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, a long time ago. It was a long
Next
time
time I
ago
have
though.
you on.
The band ended when I went to university about 10 years ago. Well, 12 years ago. So be forgiving. That's all I'll say.
Oh, I will. I have a cousin who had a three-man punk band with two bass guitarists and a drummer. So,
That's all you
and
need.
if
That's
he's
all.
listening to this,
That's
I
all you
still
need.
love
Yeah.
that song. I still love that song. Yeah. All right. The third question is, what is your favorite book of the Bible?
I suppose it's Ecclesiastes. Really. Um, I don't
Okay.
know. I'm not. I can't really.
Yeah.
Can't really explain
Yeah.
it. It's just that it just speaks to me. That's all I can really say. It's all is vanity, you know, and I kind of live by that mantra of trying not to fall into the trap of repeating the same mistakes. And it's kind of I kind of carried it with me as wise advice my entire life since being saved, and I guess it's always got
Mm.
a place in my heart.
Yeah. 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 Well, I mean, the wisest man in the world wrote it. So I'm sure we've got to take it where it is. And then the final question, and again, I ask this of all people that come on here, is, and you are allowed to say that you don't want to answer the question. It is totally up to you. But we do ask, what is probably one of the strangest things that has happened in your life?
Hmm.
Paranormal, anything, just
I suppose we're going to talk about it today. But it was God. There's so many. This is the problem. I've had many strange events, but the strangest was probably when I was 17, well, 17. I think I was 17, and I did Salvia Divinorum with my best friend in his bedroom in a proper analytical
mm,
sense. Like he had a notepad at the ready. I was there. We made a homemade plastic device in order to inhale the dried salvia 40 times divinorum leaves, and we didn't know it at the time. I didn't know this at the time, but it's way more powerful than dimethyltryptamine. I thought it was just a legal high you could get in some head shop somewhere, which it was at the time, so I didn't think much of it. But that was probably the moment in my life where I very quickly realized and what I see with my eyes is not all that there is. And that was kind of, for a 17-year-old atheistic, hedonistic, um, logistical minded type person, that was a bit of a shock to the system. So I suppose that was the most shocking thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. But after that, as we'll probably get into, there was a pursuit to chase it and find out more and see more, which led me to have many other experiences. But I suppose we've got to start from the beginning. I suppose that was a big one. But obviously, I would say that wasn't the best experience of my
Wow.
life. You know,
Yeah.
the best, the greatest, most spiritual experience I've ever had is when I was born again, inadvertently in a bathtub in Newcastle. When I get my life over
Mm,
to
mhm,
Christ, I say that was a more
mm.
profound spiritual experience than anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amen. 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 Yeah. For those of us who have lived the life right there on the edge of the seen and unseen for most of our lives, you know, those experiences that we have an incredible impact on the direction of our life and the things that we tend to focus on for sure. That's definitely a common theme that we've had over the last few um, talks. And but that ultimate moment when you accept Christ and you realize who really is sovereign and who is in control.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it definitely takes the cake for sure, for sure, for sure.
Hmm.
Well, that's awesome. Well, so thank you for answering the questions. Thank you for your candor in that. I appreciate it. I always try to make sure that people feel like if they don't want to talk about it, they don't have to.
Hmm.
Just because sometimes it can get weird. But then again, this is what this is about. Here on the Christian Underground podcast, we definitely adhere to Dr. Michael Heiser's, you know, saying that if it's in the Bible and if it's weird, it's probably important. So
Oh yeah.
that's what we tend to apply to here. And so that's going to bring us into this show because this is definitely something that is weird, but I love it. The first time I heard you, you were on, I believe it was Camp Herman.
Hmm.
Um, so shout out to Chris and Tori and Mike. And we and I was listening to what you had to say, and I just thought it was incredibly compelling. As someone who has taught world geography, taught world history at the high school level, and studied the different anthropologies of different cultures, you see these entities throughout the world. But what I would like to give you before we get into that, what I'd like to do is give you an opportunity just to kind of let people know who is Paul Stobbs, kind of give a short CV, if you will,
Hmm.
and then we'll jump right into the world of clowns.
Sure. So, as short as I can keep it, and I've been working on keeping this as short as possible with every interview I do. I am predominantly a YouTuber who creates videos on the topic of biblical history, the Nephilim, and I've become more um, well known for my specific theory known as the Nephilim look like clowns, which on the surface sounds like a stupid idea, but really it is a serious anthropological study of biblical history and ancestor spirit folk traditions all around the earth, which are dedicated to channeling demons and venerating the Nephilim. And also, it's also a deep dive into secret societies and their influence in creating and injecting into our Western world the image of a clown as a copy of these specific folk traditions all around the earth, which venerate and channel the Nephilim. And the only difference is in the West, it's an occult symbol. We're not supposed to know it means that or it is used for that purpose. But in these other cultures, which I try and prove in my work and in the book I'm writing, they know full well that when they dress that way, they're channeling the Nephilim. And that's my work summed up in a nutshell. But I've also become pretty well known lately for discussing a very fringe new topic relating to the millennial kingdom of Christ and whether or not we're living in the little season. So a lot of people know me for that as well. But today we're going to talk about the clowns. The clowns is my project. It's my baby. It's my thing. It's what I've spent my 7 years of my life, maybe 8 years now, focusing on. And like I said, I'm currently halfway through writing it, a 600-page epic dedicated to this concept and fleshing it out. And that should be hopefully ready and
Mm.
published by early next year. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like you're writing, a dissertation for sure. And as people that I know that have gone through their PhDs, when you're done, it's like giving birth. So, and trust me, that came from women who had 3 children,
Yeah. Well,
who have their
the thing
PhDs, and
is,
they're like,
I
yeah,
wrote
it's
I wrote my dissertation in university. I have a fine art degree, you see, from Lincoln University, and my
mm,
dissertation was on occult symbolism in modern artwork, and that was 10,000 words. I'm already at 80,000 with this book alone now, so I've written 8 dissertations so far, and I have at least another 20 to go. I think, because I have everything outlined as I'm going to write it. I already know what each chapter is
mm,
going to be titled and what the rough idea of everything is. But when you start writing each
mm.
chapter, it ends up becoming a book in itself. Um, but yeah, I'll stop there. I'll let you carry on.
No, that's fine, man. I understand. When you're passionate about a subject matter, you could go on and on about it, and I love it. I
Absolutely,
love it. I love it.
absolutely.
And when you finally do publish, we want to get you back on so we can hawk the book for you. And hopefully there'll be enough people on here to make it worth it for you.
Thank you.
But the let's no, absolutely, absolutely. We want to get this work out there because, like I said, when I heard you talking about this topic on Camp Herman. I mean, initially when you see the title, you're going, the Nephilim were clowns. What? But when you know people who have had, was it colorphor colorphobia or the fear of clowns? When you know people that are scared of clowns, you're sitting there. Were you traumatized as a child? What was going on? But as you went through your thesis, um, it began to make sense. So let's really take me to how draw that connection between, if you can, that basic thesis of the Nephilim and clowns. Draw that connection for us.
Sure. So predominantly, this is all based out of biblical
That may be
history.
too broad. I don't
No,
know.
no, it's not. Well, this is the issue. When I
Mm,
do discuss this topic, you have to understand that I do have to kind of lay a lot of context down to build the theory upon, and the context is biblical
mhm,
history and biblical. So there's evidence, let's say, that there are giants all over the earth in ancient history. They go by many names. But fundamentally, I came to it from the biblical understanding of the watchers of Enoch coming down and mating with human women. Okay, and that predominantly that is the same story that seems to be told all over the earth, just with different names. It's often stylized as something like rainbow serpents coming down and fertilizing the dry lands, for example, or something like that. Heaven coming down to meet earth in some way. But it's explained very clearly in the Book of Enoch that the Watchers, who were supposed to be our caretakers, were in some way convinced or made the choice to take human women as wives, which is a serious problem. The offspring that they produced were the giants of old, the men of renown, as described in Genesis 6. Now, the common understanding and what you normally see when people describe Nephilim and the images that people tend to get from Google and use on the presentations is really, really tall, tanned, hench Conan the Barbarian looking long brown haired men, but just really tall, with like a loincloth or something or a big club. And what I realized is that's kind of not really what they would have looked like based on the description of the fathers and also the wives that they would have chosen specifically to do this. And this is where I got the initial foundation idea of building the theory from. So if you have to understand that the angels specifically that were watching over humanity. I believe they were the closest to God. I believe they were his trusted confidants. I believe they were the seraphim angels which sing holy, holy, holy around his throne, the ones capable of getting close enough to God in his glory by virtue of their 6 wings that protected them from it. Now, I think it was those sons of God, as they're described in many places, that were chosen to watch over humanity. Now, a lot of my book lays out, and this has been discussed quite a lot in many other people's works as well, but we are in the middle of a spiritual war. This is Ephesians 6:12. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We wrestle against principalities, spiritual wickedness in high places. And this war has been going on since the beginning of humanity, and also since this initial incursion and rebellion where there was a corruption made to the genome, which is the fallen angels mating with human women. And I believe this rebellion started with Lucifer and a refusal to bow down to humanity and be chosen over themselves. And for God to choose a mammal like us was probably an insult to these fiery flying serpents who considered themselves the perfect race, who should have perhaps been chosen. It's described that the serpent was very cunning and walked in the garden with Eve. People assume this must be Satan, but I'm starting to think maybe the serpent that walked in the garden with Eve was another type of being of some kind. And I consider it maybe a birds of a feather flock together situation in which the serpentine race of bipedal beings that walked around with humans sided with the rebellious angels, who were the fiery flying seraphim serpent angels. And it's kind of, why wouldn't they side with their own kind, if you understand? Now, that being said, and that foundation that it was the seraphim who did this deed, it would make sense that they are bringing that genetic trait to their offspring. And serpents are not really known for being bland creatures. Reptiles are perhaps some of the most colourful creatures on the earth. They are incredibly psychedelic and patterned with bright colours and insane plumage, ridges, horns, spikes, wings, the lot, sharp claws and everything else in between, along with a very colourful palate. Now, that to mix with the human woman would create something pretty psychedelic. Now, it wasn't simply just human women as well. From a lot of my work, it seems like it was specifically the daughters of Cain who decided to mate with these seraphim angels, as they too were also in rebellion against God. And this is an enemy of my enemy is my friend situation. I do think after the initial being kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and then watching Cain murder his own brother, and then go off and create a city, take a wife, and obviously be ostracized from the main lineage of everything else. I think the Watchers waited, who were in rebellion, and came to him and said, "Let's work together," basically. And I do think it seems like it's discussed that Samyaza in the Book of Enoch prepared a way for the Watchers to come down. And Samyaza was the leader of the rebellious Watchers who decided to mate with human women. But I do think the initial Watchers who came down perhaps had good intentions. They believed they were supposed to come down and help humanity learn how to better have a relationship with God, because they're obviously sinful creatures after their fall. But I think Samyaza already came down first, talked to Cain, and made a deal with him to build cities for these Watchers to reside, and for the future Nephilim offspring to also fill it as well. And this is discussed in Enoch, and I think it's mentioned in the Book of Giants as well that this happened, which is quite interesting. It's like it was planned ahead before the rest of the Watchers came with Samyaza, and then it seems like Samyaza or Azazel convinced them to take wives. So that's where this rebellion went into full swing. And it seems like this only happened by the 6th generation
Now,
from Seth. So it seems
so
sorry, go ahead. I'll let
no,
you
no, no,
go.
yeah.
I'll let you go. Go
It's
ahead.
so when we're looking at this, so okay. So when we're looking at this, the so looking at the Book of Enoch, one of the one of the angels, or one of the Watchers, and I think it might have been Azazel. Not
Mm-hmm.
100% sure that which one's named, that taught the people the coloring of the eyes, or the makeup that
Yes.
is there. But what I think you're alluding to is that as these entities had offspring, and this offspring, which is the Nephilim,
Hmm.
as they were coming out, they were taking on some of the uh, attributes of their fathers,
Yes.
and thus creating kind of this, what we would today call clownistic, or this type of exaggerated features.
Hmm.
Is that am I getting that correct? Is that kind of a correct summary?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But it's also from the mothers, it seems, as well. Now, a lot of people this is a contentious view. A lot of people assume the mark of Cain
Mm.
was either him being really hairy or him literally having some kind of physical mark on his forehead or something. Or a lot of people have acquainted it to black skin as the mark of Cain or something like that. But from what I've seen, there's a book called The Book of Lamech of Cain and Leviathan. Now, this is a contested book. It's apocryphal. It's not considered canon necessarily, but it's an interesting glimpse into the ancient past, that's for sure. And it was released in 2019 by the Vatican. So take it all with a pinch of salt, sure, but it does offer a new perspective on just what the Mark of Cain truly was. And it's actually incredibly white, leprous, porcelain, vampiric, paper, bleach white skin. Not the Caucasian pink and peach like me or you. I'm talking deathly your headphones you're wearing right now white, you know. And most of the book of Lamech of
Mm.
Cain is
Mm.
Lamech, who's the seventh, I think the seventh generation from Cain, trying to figure out why he has this mark. And he's going on a journey also to try and figure out who did Cain take as a wife and how did he produce so much offspring if Adam and Eve were the only two people, you know. Now, this goes into a lot of other things. Gary Wayne purports the idea that there were people before Adam and Eve as well, the day six people, but that's a whole other thing. But it's definitely an interesting theory to mix in with all of this. But if we take just the face value that the mark perhaps was leprous porcelain white skin for the humans who were of Cain's lineage, and that curse, it says, was to last to the eighth generation. And Namar would have been the eighth generation on Cain's side from Lamech, the daughter of Lamech, and she didn't have the white skin mark. And it said in the book of Lamech of Cain that she later went on to marry Noah. Um, so there's a lot of contested whether this is true or not, because obviously there's a lot of similar names through Seth's lineage. There's a Lamech on Seth's side, and there's a Lamech on um, Cain's side. Just like there's two Enochs. The firstborn Enoch of Cain is what the first city was named after, but I think it was the was it the eighth born from Seth was also called Enoch, who was taken up into heaven, and also wrote the book of Enoch. It's two separate people, Enoch the good and Enoch the bad, let's say, you know. But during this time, there was some crazy stuff going on. From what I've gathered, and from what other researchers like Gary Wayne have mentioned, is that Cain's lineage created religions which controlled mankind and humanity as best they could, and it was a lot of it was centered around first worshipping the earth and then later worshipping the fallen angels who were in rebellion against God, and then the giants. And it seems like these cults were being created from Cain's lineage to help with the rebellion efforts and to take the focus away from God and make people focus more on the new gods, which were physically there right in front of them, the giant Nephilim, you know, and then the heavenly gods, the pantheons of gods, which are all over the earth in Hindu, Greek, and Norse mythology, let's say, just for an example. And that's where a lot of these religions came from. But if we take this white porcelain skin mixed with a fiery flying serpent, you're going to get something that looks like a clown.
Mm.
And that is the base of any clown today, white grease paint with fiery red hair. And obviously, we can get into breaking down the image of a clown maybe in a little bit, but just to summarize very quickly this biblical history concept, there wouldn't be this theory without biblical history, is what I'm saying. This is completely grounded in the Bible through and through. There's no
Mm.
other way to spin this. And all of it is grounded and based in biblical understandings. I mean, in the book of Noah, for example, his father, I think it was it Methuselah? I might be getting that name wrong. I've got it written down. But his father ran to his father after Noah was born, freaking out, basically saying, "My son looks like one of the sons of the angels. His eyes are glowing, his skin is
Mm.
white with red patches, and he has golden hair which is glowing as well. And it's like my wife's given birth to a Nephilim," is what he said. Now Noah wasn't a Nephilim.
Yeah.
He was a God
Mm.
appointed future of all humanity being, which was birthed into the earth at God's appointed time for a specific purpose. So he's going to have some kind of divine energy going through him at some point. But from that fear his father had, we can know that the Nephilim did have pale white skin, large glowing eyes at the very least, by inference of the description of Noah. But most modern descriptions describe any encounter with giants, even into the modern era in North America, for example, or even in Afghanistan, if you want to take the giant of Kandahar incident as face value. They always have red hair too. Any description of the Nephilim always comes with either
Yeah, I was
red or golden hair. It's one of the two, and very large,
yeah, I was
glowing eyes. But yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was going to say something about that because yeah, I know that here in North America, I know I've been listening to the stories of the giants in Chile, the giants in Peru, the giants in Mexico, the giants in Aruba, the mound builders in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the accounts, especially from the archaeologists, the anthropologists, the people that actually worked with some of the alleged uh, skeletons,
Mm-hmm.
often talked about the red hair of these giants, and this is a continual. I mean, even whether we talk about Bigfoot. Bigfoot is often he's often shown as a red-haired or auburn-haired creature.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at almost like a large orangutan,
Absolutely.
and so that's really interesting because I think yeah, if you tie albino white skin with red hair and these red eyes, then you're going to get what are a lot of these depictions. And that was one of the things that I wanted to kind of go ahead and get into was I wanted to kind of show the audience some of these depictions, especially since we're talking about giants here in North America.
Mm-hmm.
What I would go ahead and do, and I'll have you speak into these photos,
Sure.
is so I'm going to go ahead and put up this first image here.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and speak into what you're seeing in front of you.
This looks like the Kachina from the
If
Hopi
you can see it,
tribe.
it's the native.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is from the Pueblo tribes. I think this is
Hmm.
the clown
Hmm.
character.
And
Um,
so,
yeah, and a lot in the Hopi Kachinas as well.
mhm,
The
mhm.
Heyoka. Um, you'll see
And
the
so
commonalities
one of the
between
things
the
that I see
two.
here,
Go ahead, sorry.
yeah, yeah, you see the
Hmm.
white with the black. No, 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 no. The white with the black. I see, up definitely this picture that I'm gonna put up now. You can kind of see the red, you know.
Hmm.
But what's interesting to me is these what looks like horns coming off of the head, which again, we have this common. I'm not saying that these entities were horned necessarily, but I do know that we have a common mythology of horned demons
Hmm.
when we talk about demons, when we talk about these creatures. Is this when you're looking at the clown? Is this something that you see that's consistent um, globally, or is this more regional when you see like the Hopi?
The black and white
Um,
fractal patterns. No, it's a common motif that you can find weaved
the
throughout.
black and white fractal pattern.
Yeah, yeah, it's something. It's a common motif you can find weaved out throughout a
Mm.
lot of different cultures. I mean, Rangda, the demon queen of Bali, for example, she's also depicted with black and white checkers and lines too, and that's on a completely different continent, completely separated by thousands of miles. You see, what you showed there was an example of what are known as clown societies. Now, the clown within these tribal societies in the Americas, for example, like the Heyoka Kachina. and what you saw that the Pueblo tribes and even the Selknam tribes in South America as well, which have an even trippier looking version of what you just saw there, but very similar. These are entities or clown characters which do everything in reverse or against societal norms, but they're also considered extremely important high shamanistic priests within the society as well. They play both role of leader and clown simultaneously, and they're revered as extremely important to the culture. So we call them from a Western anthropological sense, clown societies, where they have this high shamanistic priest who takes on the role of the irreverent. So what you showed there was those specific examples, and they've modeled themselves after something from the ancient history, something they considered important, something they considered perhaps the builders or the ancestors of the past civilizations up to the modern day. And they hold them in such high regards, and only the shaman can channel this specific entity, this specific type of character, because that's how it works. You dress like the thing to channel the thing. So they dress like that to specifically channel the Nephilim. And what you're seeing with this black and white patterned skin is the snake skin. There's plenty of snakes who have that same design, in fact. But also you have dragons, reptiles, things with horns, antennas, even insects in some way may be related to this because a lot of angels were animalistic in their forms. So you may see other things like aquatic themes, marine themes, just animalistic features in general, but with a humanoid type form, which is what you saw there. And yes, funnily enough, the one you showed me as well, they actually have big red shoes like a typical clown. Funnily enough, they often wear really big red long clown shoes. So they do, no, they do, and I couldn't help but imagine that the Freemasons, when designing what we call a clown, perhaps borrowed that motif from that specific tribe and added it into their caricature. Absolutely. You could just Google it now if you wanted to get some images up, and
Yeah.
you'll find
So
them.
speaking of that, yeah. So let's talk about that. So one of the topics that we want to we focus on here at the Christian Underground is a lot of the West, looking at the West. When do we? I mean, do we see these clown motifs in, say, the Gallic tribes of France, or the Celts in Eastern and Northern Europe?
Yeah, we do. Mainly from Thracian Bulgarian culture, from the Romanian of the Eastern European regions. You find it more prevalent, more clownish than ever. But what we have in Europe, specifically in the northern regions, is the wild man tradition, which is our version of the Nephilim, and that's what we call them. We call them the wild men. And these are throwbacks to, again, very ancient Celtic memories of some kind. Really far into the north, you have things like the Tuatha De Danann as an echo to something similar, which were pale-skinned, red-haired, giant godlike kings and rulers who took over the northern regions and were in perpetual battle with even uglier-looking giant monster hybrid human creatures. But those ones specifically, the Tuatha De Danann, I think they were probably Nephilim offspring who were trying to make a name for themselves as rulers and dominion over the Gaelic, the Irish, and the British Isles. But the Celtic culture itself has many entities similar. They have a psychopomp, for example, called Ogmius, who has his tongue sticking out in a jester-like fashion, and he has chains attached to his tongue, which then attach to the necks of the souls of the dead. And he's said to be somebody who um, takes the souls of the dead to the underworld, which is a very polite way of saying murdering people and eating them, basically. So you find remnants of the wildman tradition in every country all throughout Europe, and I've made a lot of videos on this. It goes from Portugal all the way across the lands, all the way into Bulgaria and even Russia and Siberia. The wild man is their version. In fact, if you want to get into modern clowning, the proto clown known as Harlequin, which came out of the medieval period, when clowns and actors and troupes were first becoming a real popular thing. Harlequin is modelled specifically after Helikins, who is the French version of the Wild Man. And they introduced that character into the Commedia dell'arte movement of the time because the Commedia dell'arte dealt with stock characters. A stock character is a character everybody can recognize no matter where you go and perform. So the policeman, the rich man, the daughters of the rich man, the servants, the fool, things like this, you know, the soldier, um, I don't know, the mill worker or something, the baker, just stock characters, you know. No matter where you go, everyone will recognize it. And wherever this troupe went, they found the wild man. So they added it into their culture, into their shows, and they created a character called Harlequin. Harlequin has a club, which we call the slapstick, who can slap the stage and make the stage change within seconds, almost as though he had magical powers. He was fleet of foot. He could almost fly with the flips he was doing all over the place. And he had multicolored patches of hair all over his white-skinned loose rags with a beast mask originally. He had like a wild beast mask on. What you're seeing there is Joseph Grimaldi. If you type in Harlequin, or better yet, Arlecchino, which is spelled Arlecchino, Arlecchino. This is the Italian word for the same name. Arlecchino, Arlecchino. And this is the first original iterations of this character. Because you have to remember the Commedia dell'arte was an Italian troupe of actors. So they Italianized Helicans and it became many names all across Europe. So if you could perhaps find examples of Arlecchino, you can see pretty good examples, or the evolution of Harlequin or something like that. You'll see how his costume changed over many years. But right now on the screen, you have Joseph Grimaldi and his son, who is also called Joseph Grimaldi, just to complicate things. These came much later, the characters on the screen right now.
Yeah, I believe it or not, I'm actually I'm finding the Arlecchino, and I'm gonna put it up there. So we are gonna do that.
If you want,
keep going.
If you want, I can present it to you instead. I can get the images up quite quick.
Take that down. There we go.
Yeah, so I'll share my screen. I'm gonna have to. I'll just share the entire screen. I'll just share the entire screen. There we go. Okay, so if you want to click that at the bottom, now my screen, and I'll show you the evolution of Arlecchino throughout the years.
Okay.
So I think you need to click the box at the bottom of the screen there where I've created a window.
Okay.
There we go. So
let's do that.
So that's my screen. So let's look at Arlecchino.
Let's look.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is some weird anime character which is not relevant to this whatsoever. Commedia dell'arte. So Arlecchino originally looked like this patchwork character.
My daughter would like it.
So this is the original Arlecchino here, the proto version, white skin with multicolored patches all over his body with his stick there, and a beast mask with tufts of hair coming out with bulging wild eyes and red lips. And it evolved throughout the 300 years from its inception into this fancy, tight-skinned leotard-wearing sailor-type character. He actually stopped being so demonic and became pretty pathetic by his final iterations. But where he comes from, he is actually modeled after the Wild Man of Europe specifically. So the Wild Man of Europe. Here we go. So he is the stick-wielding, hairy, tuft monster here you see. This is the tradition of Europe, where you find everywhere. This is basically a Nephilim giant, or remnants of them that haunted Europe from an ancient past that were kind of remembered. I find it interesting that they're also quite hairy as well, because I think there was an Irish name called Hurricane, which is the hairy cane, basically, which is another way you can get Harlequin too. But if you look at this, you find that there's a tradition all throughout Europe where just before the Lent period, they dress like the wild man in many crazy iterations of this version. So this is why you find Harlequin became so psychedelic and colourful. It's because these tribes do dress in very psychedelic, colourful clothing when attempting to do it, as you can see here, for example. And the more colourful, the better, in fact. And in a sense, it's like they're trying to channel something when they wear these things, but they actually claim they were dressing like this to scare away evil spirits. But I don't believe that actually works. I think if you dress like something, you attract it, not scare it away. And this one in particular is pretty trippy. with a big wide grin, as you can see here. Now, one of the most common and popular events is called the Kukuri in Europe, which is in Bulgaria, where they really do lean into the wild man tradition still to this day. They claim it's thousands of years old and has never changed as an oral tradition. Here's a one beast with his tongue sticking out, for example, if we wanted to load. There we go. But this is what Harlequin is modelled after originally. It's characters like these. You can see this character here from a Bulgarian with the multicoloured fractal diamond patterned skin. They really lean into these patterned, colourful clothings in this region specifically. And they're modelling themselves after Nephilim, giants that roamed Europe. And this is what they dress like to try and mimic them. This is the version here as well, as you can see. The heart on the chest is a symbol of Dionysus, which comes from Thracia. Dionysus was a Thracian god of that region. He was the god of excess and wine and debauchery and theatre. And the heart is actually a symbol of the ivy leaf. That's where we get the heart from. And the ivy leaf was the patron plant of the patron saint of theatre, which is Dionysus. So that's why you see these symbols on these things, because this is modelled after a Thracian, Dionysian cult. Yeah, this is ancient. This is really old. This is perhaps one of the oldest traditions in Europe, to be honest. And it's very odd. It's very isolated, and it's a good insight into the types of things people were doing in the past. But they do lean very clownish with their designs, and they get more and more psychedelic in nature. And the more psychedelic, the better. And they go out in troops to do it, you know, and to make competitions out of it. But this is just our version, the European version of trying to look like the Nephilim. So look at these ones, for example. Very clownish in nature. Pale white skin with red features. And people say, oh, it's because it's cold, it's because they're Europeans, or it's because they're drunks, and that's not at all what they're doing. That's the cop-out. Look at this one with the giant face here, for example. Now, this is just in Bulgaria. If you go to the, I think it's the Caratos in Portugal, this is their version. Now, this is the other side of Europe, completely unrelated to Thracia, and they do the same. They do the same thing. They dress in multicolored pattern clothing, adorn themselves in bells, give themselves a psychedelic pattern mask, and they tell you, we are the devil. This is representing the devil. Just around the corner, just down the street, is another Portuguese village that does it this way, quite literally being a devil with horns. But this is the Kratos version. It's very colourful, very psychedelic in nature, very reptilian in design, and they are also channeling the Wild Man. That's their version of the Wild Man. And as you can see, these things were very colourful, psychedelic creatures. And that's why Arlecchino was also very colourful in his design as well, because he was modelled after these practices, people doing things like this to try and channel the spirit of the devil, of the demon, of the Nephilim, basically. And this is what they looked like. So this is just Europe. And again, we have obviously Carnival, which is later iterations that moved into Brazil, you know, and Rio, for example, which is modeled after these proto versions which you find in the European countries. But you have the Carnival of Venice, which was the birthplace of the Commedia dell'arte, you know, and they really leaned heavily into this jester-like visage, and it's the same thing. It's just our modernized version of dressing like these ancient Thracian Dionysian cult worship and venerators. The jester horns, for example, are just devil horns. That's all it really is, an iteration of. But again, it's everywhere. You have the French wildmen, French wildmen. Let's just see what comes up. You can type it in anywhere, and they'll all have their own mythology or mythos of the wild man. I think this is the French version here. People battling them in the woods. Here's another one. Always has a club, and that's why Arlecchino has his club as well. It's just echoes and remnants of the Nephilim that people dealt with, stylized into an artistic format, but they always leaned heavily colourful every time they try and represent them. And I mean, that's one thing to look at Europe. I mean, I have an enormous backlog of images I can share with you here that really drive home the point, to be honest. If I just go to my live images, which I share with people whenever I do a show, just go into the first folder and we'll just start skimming through them.
Hmm.
So yeah, I forget I'm on a Mac. I have to change the view to
Yeah.
make this work. 1 second.
Well,
Uh,
and so
yeah. So this is
okay.
this is Africa, for
No, it's
example.
fine. While you're doing that,
Yeah.
so one of the things.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
You
Well,
speak.
what I was going to say was, I mean, we were looking at the. Okay. What we were looking at the that are coming out of Europe, and especially the Arlecchino with the club, and I started thinking about like Punch and Judy, um, the puppet shows for the kids, and it looks a lot like Punch, because he's got a club, and he's always hitting
Mhm.
Judy with his club and things like that. But then I'm also thinking of, yeah, I mean, you went into Carnival, but again, Carnival is it's a carryover the from the Portuguese, from the, I mean, Mardi Gras here in the United States is a carryover from the French, and again, the Venetian mask with the jester. Again, you're talking about the horns. I mean, yeah, I mean, you're seeing this coming out, but why did it ultimately become something that now it became the entertainment for children?
Right. Well, there's an evolution from that comedial art movement I mentioned earlier. First of all, this is the Selknam tribe in South America, which is similar to the ones you were
Hmm.
describing earlier. I just thought it might be interesting to show you that. This is obviously a different continent, but the same image or look to venerate the same
Hmm. Hmm.
entities. And there it is. There's the Heyoka, god of thunder, which is also what those things are modeled after too. They're often associated with thunder gods, a lot of these American ones, and even in Australia as well, the bringers of rain. But as you can see, every culture across the earth has their own version of this. It doesn't matter where you go from Africa, which you can go to any continent, they'll all have
Hmm.
ancestor spirit worship tribes and they all dress very similar. Red headdresses, multicolored fractaled clothing or paints or diamonds or something all over the body, and they put face paint on, which makes them look like a clown. There's multiple versions of this, and they're all trying to venerate or represent the demon, basically. And they all lean into clown or Nephilim. But
Hmm.
yeah, so the evolution, it can be explained. I thought that one was interesting. They put red dots on the nose here and in a very isolated tribe in Papua New Guinea. I thought that was quite interesting, and they white up the skin as well. But yeah, ultimately, well, I'll switch the screen back up so I can show you
Yeah,
maybe
that's
some
really
visuals
neat.
as I explain this. So we have the Commedia dell'arte movement as I described earlier with Harlequin as the main, as kind of like the main demonic figure, the main protagonist who basically ran the show. Everyone went to go see Harlequin. That's why you went to these shows. You went to go see this guy do his crazy antics, and always stealing the daughter of the rich man, which is Columbine here, and running away with her. And this gag kind of developed slowly into a running theme. That it was well known that if you went to see a Harlequinade, Harlequin would steal the daughter, run away, and the rich man with his servant Pedrolino. So this is Pedrolino. Um, Pedrolino. His servant would chase after Harlequin. Okay, that's how it works. So Pedrolino here on the right chases after Harlequin here on the left to try and get the daughter back. Okay, for his boss, who's the rich man. And that's the gag. That's the show. The whole show is that. And it kind of became extremely popular in England, and kind of like a slapstick Looney Tunes style gag, to watch the clown chase after um, Harlequin. Now, Harlequin, like I said, developed into like a boring character. He was just a lovesick, doting idiot, basically, by the 1800s. So after 200 years of development, because he was initially introduced in maybe the mid 1500s to the 1600s, he developed into more of a boring character rather than cheeky and demonic. Originally, he would use his slapstick to poke it up people's rear ends and be naughty with it, and act like it was his phallus and all these type of things, really like rude stuff. But as he developed into the 1800s, he was just kind of like dull, and his only job was to simply just run away with the daughter, kind of like a fancy dandy lad about town type of thing. So there was kind of like a void created, and a new demonic character needed to replace Harlequin. And in Britain, you had the British Clown, which kind of led the show and took over as the main character of Harlequin. So you had things called Harlequinards. Um, and the Harlequinards came at the end of a pantomime. And here, for example, you see a clown falling off a ladder. You see the rich old man there on the right, and then you see Harlequin in the middle with his now sword-shaped stick instead. And it was just slapstick humor through and through, you know, that's what it was. But it came at the end of a serious 4-hour drama. The last hour would just be absolute chaos and comedy gold, you know, that's what people did. And they went to go see the Harlequinards, where the clown would jest around with Harlequin, and eventually people loved the clown more than Harlequin. But the clown you see here, he wasn't always dressed like this. He used to dress like Pedrolino I showed you earlier, that boring white plain servant rag, you know. So what happened was, in the 1800s, a son of a prominent Freemason called Charles Dibdin here. So this is Charles Dibdin Sr., very famous and powerful songwriter, playwright, musician of the day. And he was a high-level Freemason too. He was a member of the Leicestershire Lodge. He has a son called Charles Dibdin the Younger, who you see here. And Charles Dibdin the Younger was given the privilege of taking over Sadler's Wells Theatre. Sadler's Wells Theatre in London was one of the most well-known theatres of the day, next to the Royal Theatre, which was for rich people. Sadler's Wells was more for a working class clientele, we could say. But Joseph Grimaldi got his big break for Charles Dibdin the Younger's first show he put on there, and he gave Joseph Grimaldi here a chance. For many reasons, it gets very interpersonal. Favors were owed due to the owner of the theatre. His daughter was married to Joseph Grimaldi, but then his daughter died, and he made a promise to his daughter to look after Joseph. So he got Charles Dibdin the Younger to give him a leading role. He says, you have to give him a leading role. He has to make it. You know, my daughter told me to tell you this type of thing. You know? So in a way, Charles Dibdin the Younger kind of had to do this. But he realized Joseph Grimaldi was actually brilliant. He was hilarious, incredible. You know, people loved watching him. His first show was a smash hit. And for his first big break, he wore the clown costume you see here on the screen. This multicolored, psychedelic, monstrous looking thing here. And this is the first time the clown character had really dressed like this. Prior to this, it was wearing plain white clothing. The Pedrolino of Italy, the Poirot of France, for example, is the French version of this clown. So let's say Poirot. Ooh, I think I spelled that wrong. Let's just get rid of that. Yeah. So this is Poirot. This is the French version. This is what the clown typically would dress like. You know, just plain white and boring and expressive. But the British clown was that monster I just showed you there by the 1800s. And that costume was introduced as a change by the younger Dibdin, who was looking to make his mark on the industry, it says, you know, so decided to shake things up a little bit. But for 300 years, the costume hasn't changed, so why change it now, you know? Well, when you look into it, you realise that Charles Dibdin the Elder, his brother, Thomas Dibdin, was a member of, Charles Dibdin the Elder. His brother was a member of the East India Company, and he actually died over there as well. He was in the business of colonizing India, and this Charles Dibdin here was actually going to move to India, but his ship couldn't set sail due to bad weather, so he decided to stay in England and make his career here instead. But he was heavily tied to India. He loved India, specifically Calcutta as well. The eastern border of India, where the colonization attempts from the British were mainly happening, and this was the full swing of the colonization attempt during this time period. So I believe Charles Dibdin here knew very well of Indian iconography for demons. I think they must have known these things, because he is a Freemason who are linked to the ancient mystery wisdom schools. And obviously they go traveling looking for occult information so they can add to their own repertoire and information. And I think he was probably privy to the Rakshasa, um, the Raksha demons of the region. Yeah, let's look at the Raksha of, let's go Thailand. So Thailand specifically is interesting because they adorn these things on their temples, these specific versions of Nephilim. This is their attempt at creating Nephilim images. Bright coloured psychedelic skin-like clothing, a wide grin reptilian face with bucked fangs and multicoloured psychedelic patterns all over them. If you look at the Thailand temples, actually, Thailand temples, Asuras. They call them Asuras as well. It's not just Rakshasas, but they're pretty much the same thing in image. They have these Rakshasas guarding the temples, and the clothes these things wear are identical to the first costume worn by Joseph Grimaldi. I'm trying to find it. The Thailand temple. Let's put Raksha. Perhaps we'll get closer. Yeah, so here's some good examples again. You can see the face on them. These are the types of demons the costume was modeled after.
Well, yeah, you see.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you see these things. When they're doing the when you're watching, National Geographic specials, and they go to Thailand, and you see them doing kind of like, I don't remember the name of the show, maybe a Raksha show, where it's almost like kabuki theater, and they're doing their dances. They're doing dances, and they're dressed very much like this, with the masks, and
oh yeah,
they're doing
it's their version.
dances.
It's their version of the exact
see
same
that
thing
with Grimaldi, and and yeah, yeah, and when I studied theater for a while, and we know who Grimaldi is, because if you do any kind of movement class, if you do any kind of, especially if you're studying in the Stanislavski school, one of the things that you take is a movement class. Well, when you're taking a movement class, you're learning basically how to be a clown, is what you're learning how to do.
Yes,
because you're learning how to use certain types of movements to portray certain type of caricature, and basically that's what they call a clown. And so you learn about Grimaldi, and you learn about Marceau, and learn about those the mime. In mime and clown are not the same thing, but you still learn who these people are. And Grimaldi, yeah, that was one of the things that, it was that Grimaldi could almost hypnotize people with the way that he entertained them.
oh yeah, he was the best of the best. No one's ever been like Grimaldi before, and there never will be one just like him. It's almost as though he was possessed by the spirit of something in a way. He had a very tragic life, so the fact that he could actually go out there and act like a fool was very impressive as well. That's seldom the story of a clown, isn't it? But on the screen here, you can see now side by side. This is where they got the inspiration for. This is where they got their inspiration for the costume from. It was modeled directly after these specific demons here. You can find in any Hindu region of the Indic region. So this is Thailand specifically. But there's no doubt in my mind that's where Dibdin got his inspiration from. It's practically identical. It's the same costume. And that's what Joseph Grimaldi was dressed as. He was just the brilliant actor who is credited with creating the first type of clown. But he had very little to do with it. I think he did a little bit of makeup and that's it. But the costume that we know today, which became the industry standard, was invented by the son of a Freemason, and it was modeled specifically after Hindu demons. Harlequin, the very first proto-clown, modeled after the Europeans' Wildman version of this, so their demons. And then the future clown, modeled after the Rakshasa demons of India. And just to get really conspiratorial about this, I thought it was quite funny, but Joe from Decoding Babylon podcast sent me a message saying, have you ever seen Supernatural before? It turns out in season 2, episode 6 of Supernatural, they have a Rakshasa demon.
One of our favorite shows here.
And guess what? The Rakshasa demon looks like a clown.
They do. Yes, they do.
And I didn't know this existed until after I'd made this connection. Somebody pointed it out to me. So the media who use the clown regularly to control you and make you dress like them already know this.
Yeah.
They already know all this stuff. I've just kind of discovered it, you know. But that's where Joseph Grimaldi's costume came from, and then he obviously evolved over the time to become what we dress as today as clowns. But he was the first person to really do it, and you know, I do believe the Freemasons do use the clown for the same purposes all these cultures I was showing you earlier dress like clowns too. So if I show you, let's just close that desktop. If I go to live images.
Okay, Supernatural is a big show for me and my family, and we so that episode is, I mean, it is a clown. It is a clown at a carnival, the Rakshasa clown.
Yeah.
And it is consuming children. And oh, by the way, the lead character of the episode is afraid of clowns. Does
Yeah.
not like clowns. Okay,
Yeah.
so that becomes an issue in the show. But Supernatural, the show, one of the things I may actually even do a podcast episode about the show Supernatural, because the creator of the show, Eric Kripke, okay, he is rooted in Jewish Kabbalahism. And when you look at the show itself, a lot of the incantations, a lot of the things that they do on the show are from the Book of Solomon. Okay, they are from the Wisdom of Solomon. They are very much Kabbalah-esque, and the belief system is very much Kabbalah-esque. Demons and angels are the bad guys. Demons ultimately become the good guys. And I mean, it's a show that it first started out hunting the blurry sphere, right? You know, the blurry creatures, and then quickly became into this angels versus demons kind of motif.
Yeah, fascinating. They're all in on it. They all know what the costume's truly used for. It's the same reason people in these tribes all over the earth dress like this way. They know why they're dressing like this. Okay, they're dressing like this to channel the spirits of their ancestors. They call them ancestors. They don't mean grandma or granddad. They mean the Nephilim, the builders of their culture and civilization, the ancient kings and rulers. The reason they squash their children's heads to look elongated, they're trying to emulate something they consider a beauty standard modeled after their ancient gods, you know. The clown is just a copy. It's a Western version of things like this. It's our way of dress. Look at this one, for example, in Papua New Guinea. Red nose, wild red hair. You know, this is what they looked like. And we just created the image of a clown and introduced it into the West as an occult symbol for the purpose of creating portals to channel the spirits into our world. And that's why they dress this way. Just because we don't realize we're dressing like that and having that effect doesn't make us immune to it in any way, shape, or form, you know. So in a way, every year a new Joker film comes out or a new reboot of the Joker happens, and every Halloween people dress like the Joker to no end. But we laugh about it. But what you're really doing is you're making people do this, you know, ignorantly and channel the Nephilim, basically. And that's the point. Open as many portals as they possibly
Bubbles the clown.
Yes. Open as many as they possibly can, as many portals as possible. And that's why these cultures dress this way. And we think a clown is just something fun for the kids, as you mentioned at the start of that question, you know. But truly, it's not. It never has been. They just force it on children because they want them dressing this way or considering it something worthy of emulation. But really, that's not at all. You'll find most famous people, most musicians, as you can see on the screen here, will dress this way or red the lips up and white the skin up in some way at some point in their career, because they are also channeling the same entities for fame and fortune and power, you know.
All right. So since we were getting into portals, we were talking about portals, I want to kind of set up this photo. All right. And so there was a Hispanic gentleman who was an electro engineer at Yale University. He created a machine that he called electrovision. And what he allegedly does is he shoots electrons into another dimension, is what he claims. He shoots it into another dimension, and the electrons come back. And when they come back, they bring up some very interesting photos. And so I want to put this photo up there for you.
Hmm.
What do you think about that?
Well, it looks like a stereotypical clown, doesn't it, with a very wide, grinned mouth. It has that symmetrical effect, though. That's clearly a mirrored image of some kind, right down the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say that. I'm always dubious of these type of things, personally. What does he claim this is exactly? What's his take on
He
all of
claims
this?
it's an entity. Yeah, he claims every one of his photos. And I mean, some of these photos come back looking like insectulans. They come
Mhm.
back looking like reptilians. One of them looks like Behemoth or Behemoth or whatever, however you say that. I never say it right. One of them, I mean, it's very satanic. These photos that come back, or what we would call satanic or demonic, or
Mhm.
definitely images of Nephilimic type creatures. And he does claim that these are entities in another dimension.
Mhm. Well, well, look, if that is true, if that's what he's managed to snapshot here, which again I'm highly dubious about, um, whether these are real or not, it is a real phenomenon that when people take things like dimethyltryptamine or heavy psychedelics or entheogens, they do experience encounters with not only insectoid beings, as you alluded to there, or giants or female goddess type beings or entities, but primarily it's what have gone by many names, including Machine Elves by Terence McKenna fame, but primarily it's jesters. And Joe Rogan has talked about
Mm,
this to no end. He's popularized the idea, but if you go into any Nexus, forum, people doing trip reports, the jester archetype entity is always mentioned. I would stress heavily to these people that they are not dealing with images of the collective conscious, archetypical representations of the self. They are dealing with literal entities that have a very specific reason for being in that dimension. It's explained thoroughly in the Bible that when these things died, their soul remains on earth, but their flesh passes away. So when a Nephilim creature dies, they become demons. They get stuck there on Earth in this other realm, which is right here with us. I refer to the astral realm as the plumbing of our universe. It's where all the out of
mm,
the sight coding is that projects the real deal, which is where we live. A lot of these people who take these psychedelics are fooled
mhm,
into thinking they're going somewhere special, somewhere better than where we are. All they're going to is a place where there are no embodied forms. We live in the realm where forms can be embodied. We are the prize to these things. They want a body once more. So this is where demonic possession comes into it. The whole point of demonic possession is that these entities want to live vicariously through our senses because they don't have any anymore. So when they possess an individual, they tend to make them do things which are quite heinous, lustful, prideful, gluttonous in some way, because they're trying to feel through your tongue, through your nose, eyes, and fingers, the sensations that they crave so much. And that's what possession truly is about. And the stronger you can make that pathway to them, the more control they can have, the more they can experience, which is why there is such a push to get people to dress like clowns even today. Clown core fashion is the hottest trend of 2023, trying to get people to dress in more
mhm,
clownish clothing because they're trying to strengthen these channels. A lot of these ancestor spirit culture worship people who dress in this way. Once they get possessed by the clown, they give it something like food or drink or alcohol or drugs or smoke or a cigar, even in Haitian culture when they're channeling Papa Legba. But the whole point is to feed
mm,
the demon things, feed the ancestor things, because that's what they want and that's what makes them happy. And in return, they get things like wisdom, knowledge, strength, or the voodoo, witchcraft, the ability to kill their enemies or whatever. There's an exchange of some kind.
mhm,
But what these people are experiencing when they take entheogens, what they're talking to, the only things that are there are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. The DMT realm itself isn't evil, it's necessary. Like I said, it's the plumbing of our universe. It's where the matrix coding is that projects our universe. It's a perfectly normal, natural, God-created realm. It's just currently a war zone. So going there is a very, very, very bad idea because it's only filled with your enemies. And their fate is sealed. At the end of time, they'll be cast into the lake of fire before a new heaven and earth is created. Until that point, they're basically just trying to do everything they can to experience as much as they can, and they do that through you. But never forget, as I said at the beginning, this is Ephesians 6:12. They are foot soldiers in a spiritual war that we're involved with. They answer to a hierarchy. They answer to their parents, the fallen angels, who are still at war with us today. And they will,
Yeah.
they're a part of that agenda. So that image you showed me there, if he is pulling them straight from the astral realm and they look like clowns, it's not surprising because he's just channeling the entities I've been stressing here today, you know. And this is coming from somebody who's done all the drugs, by the way.
And right. Well, yeah, that is definitely not something I'm well versed in, but what I look at when I see this is you're absolutely right. The Ephesians 6 is it's the principalities and powers of the air that Paul talks about. And you said something that was really interesting to me, because these entities, they offer they offer a false wisdom, they offer knowledge, they offer power, they offer the things that they need to entice humanity. I think it was there was a gentleman, his name is escaping me now, but he has a podcast, and he's former CIA, and he was talking about that there are three hierarchies of needs that the CIA focuses on when they want to turn a person: power, money, or influence. What is the person that's sitting across the table? What are they desiring? And what he said is the person who wants power and the person who wants money are the two people that he can deal with all the time. The person who scares him is the person who wants influence. And I think that that's what we're dealing with here. Is we're dealing with the spiritual level of an entity that wants to influence us. And what's really interesting is it's a counterfeit to what God promises us in His Word. And this was something that I'm doing a deep dive into Proverbs right now, where I'm doing a very deep exegetical dive into it, and I'm looking at the Hebrew, and I'm looking at, and when we looked at Proverbs 1, 23 and 24, what you see God, who is personified as wisdom, in that basically saying, after he's chastised the people who go after ill-gotten gain, who greedily go after things, who kill people for influence, power, those types of things, he goes into it and he says, if the fool will basically listen to the reproof of wisdom, that he'll basically turn on the fire hose of his spirit, and he will give us his mind and his ability to differentiate between good and evil. And I think that what you just said earlier about that these entities promise this knowledge, it's going back to the garden, right? The knowledge, surely you won't be like, you'll be like God, you'll have the knowledge of good and evil. And that's what I think the whole DMT push is this push of, well, hey, you can't trust the religious, why don't you go have your own experience, and then that can become your religion. And they're going to go play with these entities that we're talking about today. One of the things that the entities want to try to do is they want to try to make themselves look either more appealing or less harmful. And so what I want to take the remainder of our time together today is, I want to take the time to have you speak on the circus, how the circus was used to kind of take the edge off of this entity and make the clown something that is more palatable for children.
Well, you basically have just summed up exactly what the purpose of the circus and the clown was right there. One thing I'll say is with the promise of knowledge that these things give you, and what the promise that taking DMT will reveal to you is actually a sick joke when you actually understand that where you go is actually the sewer system of reality. You're going down, not up. The myth is that you're going to higher consciousness planes, where you can learn deep wisdoms from these advanced ascended masters or aliens or gurus or whatever they want to call themselves. They always have a different name. But where you're actually going is you're descending into a lesser realm where there's no such thing as embodied forms. We're in a higher dimension to them, technically. But they've lied and told you you're going somewhere special. The truth is, heaven, as defined, where God resides, is something far greater than these things can promise or give you or show you. And, if you do become a Christian and try to build a relationship with God through his son, Jesus Christ, you actually will be revealed far more than anything these drugs can ever actually offer you. And that's coming from personal experience, guys. I'm actually telling you this as somebody who's, been on both sides of the coin. It pales in significance when you actually consider the heavenly things over these lesser realms. So that being said, yes, the circus. So, um, out of British theatre, which I explained earlier, where Joseph Grimaldi was popularising the image of a clown, you would find there was an expansionist movement going out in America out west, and circuses have always been a thing, but primarily in the early 1700s, they were horse tricks, which involved running around a ring at fast paces on a horse, and then standing on the horse's back using the centrifugal forces to keep you in that zone, so you could do crazy backflips on a horse and remain on the horse. That was popularized by somebody who was known as Astley, Richard Astley, um, who basically was an ex-general who was a master horse rider who created his first Astley Circus, or Astley Equestrian something or other. It's a very long-winded British word. But the word circus got introduced in Britain maybe about 30 to 50 years after Astley had started his company. Funnily enough, by Charles Dibdin again, the one who was the master Freemason whose son created the costume of a clown. It all comes full circle. Now, Charles Dibdin teamed up with somebody called Richard Hughes, who was also the manager of the Sadler's Wells Theatre, by the way, the one where the clown was first created and popularised again, where Charles Dibdin's son worked. So it's all kept in the family. It's all tightly knit. It's not what you know, it's who you know, sort of stuff. But Charles Dibdin Sr. and Charles Hughes created the Royal Circus. So they're the ones who created the first thing that was called a circus in Britain. Prior to that, you had Roman circuses, which was, horses running around in a circle with chariots, and races, horse races. That was the Roman circus, sure. But the term circus, as being a modern word for what we call circuses today, was coined by Charles Dibdin and Richard Hughes in Britain in about, 1780, I think it was, or something like that. So circuses had developed from there, but it was really all about theatre. Clowns hadn't really left the theatre by this point. They started to introduce clowns into the circuses coming out of the 1800s as kind of entertainment between scene changes, when the horses were taking a break or they needed to swap out some kind of scene or something, that the clown would come out and keep the crowd busy. And that's basically the first proto form of a circus coming out of Britain. So when obviously colonizers came over to America and were expanding out west there and bringing British culture with them, they brought the theatres with them. But the theatres kept burning down. And they found that the audiences were always moving and, like I said, going further and further west. So they had to adapt, and it ended up becoming something that we call a traveling itinerant circus in America, where you have these big top tents that would travel rather than stay in one spot. So they traveled with the people to maintain a constant steady flow. And with the laying down of train lines, it got easier to travel with more stuff. And you'll find during these early times, it was a wild west of circuses, mainly run by businessmen and con men and swindlers, basically, who were looking for a cheap, quick money, a cheap buck, basically. And you find
P.T.
that,
Barnum.
yeah, you find the people who were taking over these American circuses were members of brotherhoods as well. You know, they were members of Freemasonry or the Oddfellows and things like this, and they were basically looking to co-opt the most popular entertainment industries of that era, which was the traveling circus. Just like the Illuminati take over the music industry today, the Illuminati took over the theatre industry, and that then it's never changed. It's always been the same game, just with a different name, you know. And like I said, P.T. Barnum is the one who really created circuses as we know them. P.T. Barnum was originally a bookie, and he made money by putting on a lottery. But he got into like a feud with the Lutheran ministers of his region of where he lived, which was I think just north of New York. I think it was. He lived in that area, and I think it was Connecticut or something. I've written it down in my book, but I'm blanking now because I'm not an American expert. You know, I'm from Britain. But it basically he got gambling became illegal, which was a big issue for him. He lost a lot of money and his name in his the way he made money because of this. He even created a newspaper and a magazine specifically to fight against the legalization of gambling, so he could keep his. He was a really weird guy, you know. Really went out there to maintain his money flow in the most corruptible of means, you know. But after that, he needed to make more money. So what he did, he had a friend who sold him a slave. And he said that this black woman was really, really, really old, like hundreds of years old, and was the servant of George Washington or something like that. Right? I'm not joking. I'm not joking. And he made
I love P.T. Barnum.
yeah, he made it was a complete lie, you know. This was just an old woman who couldn't move, basically. She was paralyzed, and he basically kept her alive and fed her, obviously, and looked after her and gave her a home. But he showed her off to the world as this false person who she wasn't really, you know. And he was a con man. He was a swindler. That's what he did, you know. He made stuff up and made people pay to come and see it. And that was his first. And from the money he made from that, he bought himself a band and he tried to go around creating music and also attracting like oddities, like deformed people, freaks, and things like that as well. But he had to go in the music industry. He worked with somebody called Lang, who was a Swedish singer, and he made a lot of money from her, millions from her. But she was a bit of a philanthropist. All the millions she made, she gave back to the poor. She didn't really care about it. She was already rich enough. But P.T. Barnum took everything he could and used that money to buy a museum. And he created a museum which was just full of nonsense from all over the world. Freemasons being the traveling men they are, they brought a lot of odd things from all these weird countries there and put them on display. But he also claimed to have a real mermaid, which when people went to see it, they realized it was a monkey's head sewn onto the body of a fish. It wasn't really a mermaid, but he was a master of sensationalism, and people just had to come and see the odd things he had on display at his museum, you know. He got embroiled in a scandal where he claimed to have the mummified remains of a real giant. Okay, but it was actually a hoax. He was just a plasticast fake model, which he had got the inspiration from because there was another guy who claimed to have a model of the remains of a real giant. Okay, so he heard that this other guy had a giant, and he was like, "I need me one of them," you know. So he went ahead and faked his own version. But then get this. This is where it gets really funny. That guy who he copied sued P.T. Barnum for taking the limelight away from his real giant. Okay, and tried to sue him for loss of income, and the whole
Oh my goodness.
the whole case got thrown out of court. Okay, because it was just so ridiculous.
Oh yeah.
And that's where the famous quote comes from. The judge or one of the prosecutors involved, presiding over the case, basically said, "There's a sucker born every minute," and that's where that phrase comes from. From that whole event, you know. People say P.T. Barnum said that. It was the judge who presided over the ridiculous case, you know. It was like, what? This is stupid. This is just stupid, you know. But P.T., he got away with that, no issues, whatever, you know, and he made his money. And that's basically P.T. Barnum's life. He went on to adopt a midget from one of his distant cousins, who he went on to name after a famous character called General Tom Thumb. and he paraded this. And actually, this guy was a brilliant performer, and people loved him, and he actually made a lot of money and died a very wealthy man thanks to P.T. Barnum. And he also became a 33-level Grandmaster Freemason, funnily enough, probably because he was friends with P.T. Barnum, who was also a member of the Oddfellows. Anyway, very late in life, this guy's 68 now, made a lot of money. He decides, I'm going to get involved in the circus. And he teams up with a traveling menagerie, Barnum, Bailey. So this is where P.T. Barnum and Bailey Circus comes from. And Barnum had all the freaks. Bailey had all the animals. Okay, so they teamed up and put on this huge animal menagerie traveling circus thing. He teamed up with a guy who was also making traveling circuses using a collapsible tent which he could put onto the back of trains. And he invented the traveling circus using the train line. And he was also the one who decided these rings need to be bigger. One ring is not enough. So he invented the 3-ring circus. And now, people don't know this, but the logo for the Oddfellows is 3 interlocking rings. So he introduced his Freemasonic occult symbolism straight into the circus ritual right there. Now, a lot of people don't realize, but in these early years, we also had other rival circuses coming around Bailey, all of them owned by Freemasons. You'll always find they're called things like the Tomlinson Bros or the Ringling Bros. And people think, oh, that's just because they're brothers. And it's like, it's not just because they're brothers. Freemasons call themselves brothers. It's a specific name they titled. It's brother something or other. You know, if you're a Freemason, you are a brother. That's the title you have. Like a doctor has Doctor so-and-so. You would be brother so-and-so if you're a Freemason, okay? So that's what they're telling you what they are. And they all decided to get together, 10 circuses, all run by Freemasons, and put on a huge spectacular called King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. This is around 1870s, something like that, you know, maybe around that period of time, yeah. Getting quite late on, you know, into the early 20th century. And P.T. Barnum's getting on at this point, and I think it's like his last show he was involved with, really. But it was a huge spectacular involving all Freemasonic leadership. All the backdrops were designed by companies who make the clothing for Freemasonic rituals in the lodges. All the costumes were designed and created by the same companies who make the costumes and the backdrops. It was all the posters were designed by British Freemasons. It was all just a huge Freemasonic spectacular. These major early circuses. And I've got the documents for this. I've got people writing about it, you know, occultism in early Freemasonic history and in the visual arts. And in this book I'm reading, they're explaining how for the initiate to go to one of these shows, it was like watching one of their tiny little lodge rituals just put onto a huge scale they could never imagine before. And that's basically what a circus is. It got turned into a copy of the rituals performed in small lodges. So you have the ringleader of a circus, for example, who wears this top hat with his cane. They say, oh, well, that's modelled after the riding crop costumes of the early equestrian horse riding circuses. No, it's not. It's modelled after the Grand Worshipful Master of a lodge, who also wears a tailcoat suit with a top hat. And only the Grand Masterful Worshipper of a Lodge, Worshipful Master, sorry, I'm getting messed up there, only he is allowed to wear a black top hat, and that's who leads the lodge and leads the rituals. So in a circus, in the center of a sigil ring, you have the Hat Man, Ringmaster, the Grand Worshipful Master orchestrating the circus or the ritual, just as you have in the lodge. And the demons, which he is summoning and channeling and works intimately with in these ancient mystery wisdom schools, which is what they really are, is represented by the clown in the circus. So it's an esoteric symbol through and through. Everything about circuses.
Bring on the clowns.
Everything in a circus is basically an esoteric, hidden, occulted caricature of Freemasonic rituals through and through. King Solomon is the Lord of the Ring. He's the ring leader. He's the master of the rings. You know, he's the one who used the ring to control the demons to build the temples. Supposedly, you know, that's what it is. And not only is the Grand Worshipful Master a Solomon analog, but he's also obviously the ritualistic leader who controls the demons, summons the demons to build the temple, which are represented by clowns. So there you go. That's what circuses were, and they're pretty old-fashioned now. Going into the 20th century, Shriners took over the circuses of America. and every circus in America is pretty much run by the Shriners. You'll find the Shriners, which are a level above Freemasonry. You have to be a 33rd degree Freemason before you can join the Shriners. They all have a sect where they dress like clowns. Every faction, every shrine has a clown cult within it, and they have to dress like clowns and go entertain children, or go and do little parades where they drive around in little cars, and entertain the sick children at the hospitals they run, which are basically just giant loosh farms to scare the crap out of children in their last moments of life and feed the demon that they're channeling while they're dressed like it, because at the end of the day, secret societies are are physical foot soldiers who answer to the spiritual demons, who they in turn answer to their spiritual fallen angel fathers. There's a hierarchy. So they're all in communication with each other in a hierarchical system. And the next step, the next level above the secret societies who are men, are the demons on the other side. So they're in constant communication with them, in constant rituals to work with them, and they know what they look like. So they created the clown as a way to dress like their bosses, their gods, so they could do it publicly without people realizing it. And now they're in that game now of making other people dress like it too unknowingly by popularizing the clown in modern society. So more and more people can clown themselves up as much as possible, opening more stronger channels for the Nephilim to have a means of control over people in this realm. Remove God as much as possible, replace it with clowns, then you've got a channel for the Nephilim to return more easily. And I believe that's what the 2016 clown sightings was truly all about. It was a message, the clowns, the Nephilim are returning in a spiritual sense,
Yeah.
So there we go. Summarize as quick as I can.
Well, we had,
yeah.
Here in Fort Worth, we had clowns. There were clowns in a neighborhood here called Saginaw, which is in the northern part of Fort Worth, and it was pretty scary. I mean, for people that were living, I was teaching in that area. And it was pretty scary for a lot of people, because these clowns, they were trying to hurt people. It wasn't just, they were just standing there looking scary. They were literally trying to hurt people. And you got a lot of kind of ham-handed explanations in the media about, well, these are just people that are part of some gang called that are loosely affiliated with the Insane Clown Posse and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just going, there's more to this than that.
Oh yeah.
But it's incredible when you look at this stuff. And again, when you really get into this world that we're living in, and you begin to start pulling back the veil, there are times where sometimes you have to step back and you just have to go, am I going crazy? Because the Enlightenment and the modern world convinced us that scientific materialism was it, that there's nothing beyond what you can smell, taste, hear, and touch. And when you open yourselves to the realization that, and there are Christians that grew up in the charismatic space that, we know the Holy Spirit, and we know the demons, and we know that, okay. But when you really look at the tricks and what the devil has done, to bring people and to convince people that they are not doing something evil, right? It's just, wow. Well, listen, I really want to thank you for coming. I would love to have you back on where we can do even more of a deeper dive. Plus, also, I'd love to have you come on and talk about the modern clown culture, what we're seeing today, and how it reflects on your. So we'll get together to see if maybe we can work that out, if that's good for you.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, like I said, we touched on the basic precursor history to all of this today, and where the theory has its basis in reality. Its practical applications are really manifest in the modern world through things like the music industry, the art industry, idol worship, movies, media. All media is pushing this on you in ways you just don't even realize, and they've been doing it for a long time. And you wouldn't even recognize it as clown necessarily. One very, very quick example I can give you is David Bowie. Pale white skin, red hair, multicolored fractaled clothing.
Mm.
The true trick to becoming famous and powerful in this world is not to have any talent necessarily, but it's to dress like a fractaled clown monster as much as you possibly can, and you will be elevated by the people who run the industries, because they want those type of people who dress that way to be the idols other people emulate. It's that simple.
Yep. Lil Nas, Lady Gaga,
Oh yeah.
Cher. Just to name 3 off the top of my head that I mean, like
It goes deep. It goes
all
very
right.
deep.
Well, well, we'll cover that then on the next episode for sure.
Yeah.
Well, hey, let us know. Drop where people can find you, where your YouTube channel, your website, all that kind of stuff. Let people know that real quick.
Sure, so you can find me on YouTube. Just search for Understanding Conspiracy and you will find all my work there, no problem. Just type in Nephilim Clowns and I'm sure you'll find all my videos coming up straight away as well. You can find me on Twitter at UConspiracy, and I'm also on Rumble as well if you want to find my videos on there. I'm currently in the arduous process of uploading them all and backing all my work up on that channel, just in case one day YouTube decides to rip it all away from me. You know, you never know. So you can also follow me on Rumble if you want to. I do have a Patreon if you want to sign up. $5 a month gets you access to all these extra little bits, as well as it helps support me do what I do. I am self-employed and I do this full time next to my photography job, so any little help. So if you want to support me, you can do that. You can also pre-order the book I'm writing on this particular subject by going to the GoFundMe. All the links are down below, or you can just Google Nephilim Clown GoFundMe and it will come up. Pre-orders are still available, but they are limited. I'm probably going to cut it in the next 17 pre-orders. I've already had about 65. So I'm going to cut it soon. But yeah, that's available if you want to support me that way as well and get a copy of the book, which will be signed by myself and sent to you personally if you do pre-order a book. So all the information's on that website. So yeah, YouTube is where I'm at. Back up on Rumble. You can find me on Twitter. I am on Instagram under Paul Anthony Stobbs too. So there we go.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Paul. I want to thank again the listeners for staying with us, especially going down this rabbit hole with us. And trust me, it is worth your time to come back and hear Paul when we discuss and do a deeper dive into the clown and the Nephilim connection. But from now on, guys, just go out there, enjoy life. May God bless you. May He keep you. May He shine His countenance upon you, and may He give you peace. God bless.
Thank you.
I want you to get together.